it is right now. Today, of course, is July 24th. I am Chris Gros, joined here by Jack Hall. We are streaming on the CBS 8 app. I say this at the top of most shows. We have a lot to get to today, but when I tell you that our biggest story, breaking news that just occurred in the NBA world, we're going to have to actually wait to get to that because we have so many other pressing headlines and news coming on. But we'll share with you, for those that are just tuning in, LeBron James has made a decision. Jack, where's he going?
He is going to the Philadelphia 76ers.
Your new favorite team.
So I've always, I remember growing up watching Allen Iverson. I remember the process, and we were just waiting. Andre Iguodala. We were just waiting for that moment, and we've had so many. We've seen stars come and go: James Harden, Paul George, and now we have LeBron James with a good young cast. So it's going to be really exciting to see. We're going to break down everything. I kind of like how we're doing it today because we're getting reactions piling through.
We're having time to put it all
as
together.
the show goes on. I'm trying to grab different graphics and all that and try to get some reactions. So we're giving you the best segment that we possibly can, but really exciting. But of course, you're right. First and foremost, as much as we love talking sports on the side, during the latter half of our show, we are primarily a news show. That's how we're supposed to do it. So let's do that to start off our Friday.
We will stick to that format. But again, nonetheless, a seismic shift here in the NBA that we'll get to in just a little bit. But we also, of course, have Broadway San Diego coming in for a guest segment. And we will start our show, though, with national politics and really international as well, too. President Donald Trump moving forward with a new round of tariffs on foreign goods. Starting today, the Trump administration implementing a 10 to 12.5% tariff on items shipped to the United States from dozens of countries. The measure takes effect as a previous 10% near-blanket tariff expired midnight Eastern time this morning. Senior White House officials say that President Trump remains committed to his trade agenda even after the Supreme Court rejected his tariffs earlier this year. That was actually a moment that we brought to you live here on this show. His reaction to a very strong reaction, I should say, rejecting the premise behind the Supreme Court argument. Very upset, even, going as far as to say that they had been, influenced, I believe, in their decision-making. But they had also talked at that same time about he and his team that they were already sort of gearing up for how to respond to how to re-implement some of these tariffs. So we're going to jump into how it is that they are defending these tariffs this go around here, and then also what it is that we expect to see and which countries are really going to be impacted by this, Jack.
Yeah, 100%. And you did a good job kind of laying down the groundwork. I'm going to kind of go a little bit deeper on there. So we're going to try to give you guys the best case scenario as we get into this. So first off, this is something that we have covered extensively. Most people have already understood this, but let's repeat it just for the sake of repeating it. President Trump, his economic ideology and the way in which he sees global trade going down is kind of harkens back to early 20th century protectionist measures. He has always argued that high tariffs, and this goes back to the 90s. This is not something that, we talk a lot about the sometimes shifting ideologies of Donald Trump. This is one of the, one of those things that he has been relatively consistent on for the past 20, 30 years or so. He argues that high tariffs will revitalize struggling American manufacturing. His trade policy that he has instituted both in his first term and to a much larger extent here in his second term overturns decades of U.S. policy, which has traditionally favored low tariffs, freer trade. This all came to a head last year in about April, when President Trump announced those reciprocal tariffs, far-reaching tariffs, variable rates on a country-by-country basis. It was determined by trade deficits that they had with their respective nations. He justified this under the 1977 International Emergency Economic Powers Act, double digits on most countries. However, as you just mentioned there, we covered it live. The Supreme Court ruled that the president did not have the power to tariff under that law. That was laid in the hands of Congress. And as a result, the Trump administration was forced to explore other options and refund importers who had paid the tariffs. And you mentioned it earlier, the Trump administration, as we do, and you see it in your reporting when they do those oral arguments, tea leaves are set. And that's something that you can read. It's not always 100% indicative of what a future ruling would be, but nonetheless, it is something that whether you're the presidential administration, whether you're a importer, whether you're a small business, you can get a sense of what could potentially happen and make certain steps to react to it when it eventually comes. And that's something that we saw the Trump administration do in this point, to the effect that said, when we were on our show in the last half hour of that broadcast, we carried a press conference that President Trump had organized where he laid out what their plan B was going to be there.
Yeah, and it would be that the 10%, this was the Section 122 of the Trade Act of 1974. That's what they put in the meantime, right?
Yes,
so
this is what expired
after
morning.
IEPA, but then this expired this morning, which now leads to what it is that they are doing now, these new tariffs. So these new tariffs are ranging from, instead of that blanket 10%, they are now 10 to 12.5%, and they are impacting about 60 of our country's trade partners, accounting for 99% of U.S. imports. Again, this is pretty much each and everybody on the list. This time, the Trump administration is using another section of the Trade Act of 1974. This one is Section 301. Now, what does Section 301 do? Well, it allows, if you take a look here at your screen, the president to impose tariffs if, quote, an act, policy, or practice of a foreign country is unreasonable or discriminatory and burdens or restricts United States commerce. Now, President Trump has used this section before to impose tariffs on China in his first term, which survived court challenges. So they know that it's been successful in the past. The tariffs can be issued if the government finds these charges to be true after an investigation. The administration began its inquiries allegedly back in March. This time, the Trump administration is charging that these countries have inadequately enforced bans on goods produced by forced labor. So this is essentially what they are saying is that these countries, they either import or export goods that have some sense of forced labor behind the creation of those goods. Therefore, we are putting these tariffs in as punishment. So either by failing to effectively impose a ban on enforcing those goods, that's how they are trying to qualify this. Notable countries with a 10% tariff rates include Canada. That's after they received a 50% tariff on certain goods imposed on Monday. Mexico. So you have both North American trade partners right there, Canada and Mexico. You have the United Kingdom, Argentina, India, and the European Union with some exceptions. Notable countries with a 12.5% tariff rate include Brazil, Russia, China, Australia, Japan, South Korea, and the United Arab Emirates. The administration proposed these tariffs last month, and some countries have already moved to make adjustments in order to receive the 10% tariff rather than the 12.5% tariff. That, according to the Trump administration.
Yeah, and something that's interesting here, there's some exceptions that are there. We mentioned the European Union. There's also some exceptions as it relates to Canada and the United States, and we'll mention that here in just a second here. The administration actually proposed these tariffs last month, so they were doing some groundwork ready to make sure that there wasn't a gap in the time in which the previous tariffs expired and the new ones could be implemented. So they tried to do this as seamlessly as possible, of course. This is now Plan C for the Trump administration in implementing this tariff policy. We've already seen certain countries try to make some adjustments because we go from 10% to 12.5%. What some countries have sought to do is essentially curry favor and perhaps qualify themselves for a lower tariff rate by perhaps tweaking some of their, charters or how they conduct their trade policy in order to, try to save a little bit of money. So this was something that administration officials have said under the promise of anonymity that India was one of these countries who's a notable example from this. They were originally going to be at that 12.5% rate, but they were able to make it a 10% rate. What they did, they amended their foreign trade policies to include a ban on forced labor. Now, we mentioned some of those exemptions for countries like Canada and Mexico. First off, let me just say that there are some broad exceptions.
Gas,
so regardless of it,
oil.
Gas, oil, fertilizer, a lot of this stuff that, uses oil in it. Of course, one of the things that we talk about here often is the Iran war and some of the cost consequences that comes as a result of that. Of course, gas prices are something we're always paying attention to here in the United States. Brent crude oil, fertilizer is one of those things that could be an offshoot of that. So trying to keep relatively stable prices on that is something that we're clearly seeing from the Trump administration. Also, the U.S., Canada, Mexico agreement that was the response for NAFTA, which was done during during President Trump's first term. It's a list of select items that are exempt from tariff rates and allows free trade to flow through the continent. Those are exempt as well. So when we say Canada and Mexico, those are all of the goods that are not exempt, not exempt, or that from that trade agreement, and also stuff that is not relating to some of the other tariffs or even added on top of some of those tariffs. So this, of course, has, just like every other time we see the Trump administration announce new trade policy, you get a lot of reactions, not just here on the domestic side, but of course on the international side, because more often than not, those are the ones that are feeling the brunt of it first and foremost. So let's break it down. We're seeing a lot of countries disputing some of the findings that we're hearing here from the Trump administration.
Yeah, we have. Chile and Brazil blasted the tariffs and defended their forced labor restrictions that they already have in place. And then Canada's trade minister called the tariffs, quote, not unexpected, adding that they share the U.S.'s goals of restricting goods made with forced labor from entering their supply chain. Now, as far as locally, we're also, and locally, I just mean here in the United States.
On a larger scale.
Much more localer than Canada. Representative Richard Neal, who is the top Democrat on the House Ways and Means Committee, is out of Massachusetts. He called the tariffs, quote, too convenient to be taken seriously, adding, quote, forced labor is a real and pervasive problem in our supply chains and demands serious enforcement. It should never be cheapened into a pretext for a tariff policy built on dubious legal theories and personal grievances. Now, critics at large, if we were to surmise what it is that they are saying, point that the tariffs are based on the, quote, importation of products made with forced labor, not the domestic production of goods using forced labor. So conceivably, again, countries are being punished with these tariffs for importing, so taking in goods that are made with forced labor, which is not something that, again, you could do something more easily if there are goods being exported in your own country with the use of forced labor. So many critics are pointing out that it's sort of like the nature of the beast of trade. There are obviously a lot of countries that still use forced labor and so forth, but sometimes those goods, you need them, and it is sort of, again, you try through different methods like tariffs, so forth, to try to crack down on that forced labor. But a lot of folks pointing out that there's not a whole lot you can do when you have those products in your supply chain. You are not the ones who are creating those products with that forced labor. It is not this country, like, for instance, let's just point out, like Japan. This is no ways insinuating that Japan is using forced labor. This is based on their importation of products of forced labor.
It's just the scope in which the Trump administration has decided to make these rules. So, so some of these critiques, of course, as we're saying here, you're hearing from Democrats, you're hearing from some human rights advocates basically saying that they're not convinced that this is something that is truly done for the sake of cracking down on this practice here. Of course, it is something that persists. That is not something that is disputable at this moment. However, we have seen the Trump administration try aggressively to maintain their status quo as it comes to their trade policy. We saw the reciprocal tariffs come and go. We saw them use the other section 122 of the Trade Act of 1974. That, of course, had a clock on it. These ones are ones that the president and the administration has had success with in the past. We mentioned those tariffs that he instituted during his first term against China. Those had survived court challenges. Whether or not these ones will, that remains to be seen. I mean, I think the first thing that we take a look at here is the scope of it. 60 countries. You know, we talk about the Canada, Mexico, China, the EU. These are some of our largest trading partners here. We've already taken some action in China in the past. In 2021, we passed legislation that would restrict the importation of goods from the Uyghur population. That's in the northwest region of China, which is something that has happened there, and that is something that the United States wanted to crack down on early. Of course, it's not a far-reaching tariff like this one was. It was a more narrow, individualized one. So we've seen action take care on that in the past. So there's going to be court challenges here. There's going to be people who say this is nothing more than an excuse to maintain their status quo. Whether or not that's the case or not, that remains to be seen. And we'll take a break here, and we'll quick production note here. We'll talk about the California rejected ballots here next, because we got about 15 minutes here until we got a really great guest here.
Really great guest. We're going to be diving into Broadway San Diego, everything that it is that they are doing here with a lot of their productions. We've got some celebrity-produced shows that are going on here by one of San Diego's newest residents. So, yeah, we have a lot to get to with them. But we're going to be talking about those ballots next year after this conversation here on these new tariffs.